The paintwork of this model is of fairly good quality and remains in good cosmetic condition for a long time. An exception may be cars of the Kaluga assembly, on which the varnish begins to peel off over the years. The hood, fenders and roof are at risk. Separately, it is worth praising the manufacturer for the high build quality, which is not often seen on budget cars. But with the quality of body iron, not everything is so smooth. Despite the fact that the manufacturer claims that the body panels are double-side galvanized, on some specimens the first centers of corrosion can already be found. The reddish coating most quickly appears on the tips of the wings at the points of contact with the bumpers, rear arches, seals and bottoms of the doors. In the risk zone is also the hood with the windshield frame, on which chips quickly begin to bloom. There is also corrosion on the bottom of the car, in which the protective plastic is damaged, the seams rust. Chrome is also considered problematic, it will climb, but you won't surprise your motorists with this shortcoming. Among the shortcomings of the external equipment of the Škoda Fabia 2, it is worth highlighting the unreliability of the wiper drive, turned sour, in the event of a malfunction of which it is necessary to change the trapezoid. There are also complaints about the performance of the rear window cleaner, the washer nozzle rotates or the drive shifts. A typical problem for this model is worn protective plastic headlights. The windshield is not resistant to damage either. The trouble is exacerbated by the small angle of inclination of the glass. Another trouble is the unsuccessful design of the ventilation shutter through which water enters the trunk. If moisture is present in the cabin, additional sealing of all ventilation holes is required. It is also recommended to make additional drainage holes in the floor and in the spare wheel well to drain water. At Škoda Fabia 2 produced in Kaluga, the tailgate can warp to the left over time. This defect, in addition to difficulties with opening and closing the trunk, is fraught with damage to the paintwork on the rear bumper. Škoda Fabia 2 power units. A wide range of power units were presented to the choice of Škoda Fabia 2 buyers: gasoline MPI 1.2, 60-70 horsepower, 1.4, 86 horsepower, and 1.6, 105 horsepower, TSI 1.2, 105 horsepower, 1.4, 180 horsepower, as well as 4 TDI diesels 1.2, 1.4, 1.6, and 1.8. Gasoline engines are representatives of the EA111 series. The 3-cylinder HTP engine BBM, CHFA, CHTA, BZG, CEVA, CGPA, CJLA, although weak, is very common in the aftermarket. Of the main weaknesses of the engine, it is worth highlighting the short resource of the timing chain and the unsuccessful design of the tensioner, which can cause a fatal meeting of pistons with valves. Fuel injectors and ignition coils are not famous for their reliability, the resource of which is significantly reduced when using low-quality gasoline. Valve burnout is also considered a common phenomenon. It leads to a decrease in compression in the cylinders. The disease manifested itself after 100,000 kilometers of run. In addition, this ICE has not entirely successful piston rings, the wear of which leads to a progressive oil burn. An unstable idling caused by cocking of the crankcase ventilation or throttle is also considered a common occurrence. The atmospheric engine 1.4 CGGB BXW is considered the most successful in the line and bothers only overt rivals. The main complaints about this internal combustion engine are caused by the short service life of the ignition elements, coils, candles. The second most popular problem is unstable idle due to severe contamination of the throttle assembly or USR. For cars with a mileage of more than 150,000 kilometers, hydraulic lifters may require replacement, they start knocking, and oil consumption increases, it is treated by replacing the valve stem seals. Often, overheating of the engine leads to the appearance of an oil burner. The timing drive of this motor uses a belt that can withstand 90,000 kilometers. The resource of the piston group is about 300,000 kilometers. This motor is considered disposable, since initially there were no regular sizes of pistons and piston rings for it, plus there are nuisance in their assembly process. Today there are enough services that do an excellent job of restoration internal combustion engine. The 1.6 engine BTS CFNA is essentially a copy of the 1.4 engine, only it has a timing chain drive with an unpredictable resource 80–150,000 kilometers and shorter T-sharped pistons. The most troublesome things in this engine are valves, they wear out quickly, and pistons, in which small scuffs appear on the skid over time, which leads to tapping on the cold. But in fairness, it is worth saying that these defects do not affect the performance of the engine for a long time. Another disadvantage of this motor is a weak thermostat, gaskets, a fuel pump, slow warm-up, and difficulty with oil selection. Tightening with the replacement of spark plugs leads to a decrease in the life of individual ignition coils. Like weaker units, the throttle and the USR valve are very sensitive to contamination, the speed floats. Turbo engines are the most problematic in the line. The time in drive is the same as that of the 1.6 atmospheric engine, but due to the presence of a balanced shaft drive, the chain life rarely exceeds 100,000 km. Stretching can be manifested by vibrations. The second source of trouble are piston rings, which tends to coke and collapse. And if in the first case this only leads to an increase in oil consumption, then in the second it all ends with scuffs on the pistons and cranking the crankshaft. The electric drive for controlling the geometry and wastegate of the turbine is not distinguished by reliability. In addition, internal combustion engines are sensitive to the quality of the oil and its level, since there is a very large load, especially on the liners. Engine pistons 1.4 have poor resistance to detonation, wreck. Diesel. Buying a diesel Škoda Fabia is a dubious decision, since such cars were not officially delivered to us, and those copies that are on the market were brought in by car businessmen and have impressive mileage, usually twisted. However, it is worth recognizing that VAC diesel engines are not bad, but are more sensitive to the quality of lubricant than similar ICEs of other brands. The exactness to the quality of the oil is due to the peculiarities of the pump injector drive. These engines did not bypass the trouble typical of diesel engines, such as a quick failure of fuel injectors, high-pressure fuel pump, EGR valve, and the particulate filter. For engines 1.4 and 1.6, in addition to the ailments mentioned above, it regularly drives grease from under the plastic valve cover. In a 1.9-liter engine, the geometry of the turbine wedge often fails, and saving on oil leads to wear of the camshaft cams and hydraulic lifters. For the Škoda Fabia 2, 3 types of gearboxes were offered: a 5-speed manual 02T, an automatic 09G, a SIN TF60SN with 6 gears, and a 7DSG DQ200 dry clutch robot. The mechanical transmission has an impressive margin of safety, and even when paired with a turbo engine, it does not often bother us with breakdowns. Among the shortcomings of the manual transmission, the owner noted excessive noise in the first 2 gears. For missions of the first years of production, the input shaft bearing did not differ in reliability. Later, the part was modernized, the plastic separator was replaced with a steel one, and the problem case to be relevant. Another disadvantage is the backstage, which with intensive use can withstand 5-6 years. The clutch kit can withstand 120–140,000 km under moderate loads. The automatic transmission is also quite reliable, but it painfully endures overheating and rare oil changes. This box uses a weak cooling system, so you need to regularly monitor the cleanliness of the heat exchanger or install an additional cooling radiator. The problem areas include the friction lining of the torque converter, which wears out intensively, clogging the solenoids and hydraulic plate channels. If the box is rarely serviced, it is recommended to change the lubricant every 40–50,000 km. This trouble will lead to oil starvation of the gearbox and its early failure. For iron, only the sun gear bushings are considered a weak point here. A signal of bushing wear will be a cloudy oil in the sump and the presence of yellow chips in it. The robot on the Škoda Fabia 2 is not common, as it was installed only in tandem with the turbo engine. For cars of the first years of production, the box did not differ in particular survivability. Later, the manufacturer eliminated some shortcomings and breakdowns began to occur less frequently, but the robot did not become reliable. The main manual transmission failures are caused by the wear of the clutch kit, which during urban operation may need to be replaced every 40–60,000 km. Things are no better with the reliability of the electronic control unit, it quickly burns out. Often, the mechatronics housing also fails, which cracks with increasing oil pressure. Another branded sore DSG is the breakdown of the 6th and the reverse gear forks. For cars with a mileage of 100,000 km, failures of the shaft bearing and the clutch fork are not uncommon. If the box is rarely serviced, the sensors and contacts will not be in the best condition, accumulates dirt. The Škoda Fabia 2 is equipped with the typical suspension configuration for this class: McPherson strut in front, a beam in the back. The chassis of the car does not have outstanding driving characteristics, but at the same time it is quite reliable and not expensive to repair. Most often, stabilizer consumables require attention, which even for cars with a package for bad roads often do not withstand more than 70,000 km. Quite early, on silent blocks, ball bearings, wheel and thrust bearings, which quickly give up after serious blows, may require attention. If you do not overload the car and slow down on broken selections on the road, most parts will easily last 80–100,000 km, which is a good result for a budget car. In the steering, a rack and pinion mechanism with EGUR is used, a combination of hydraulic rack and an electric pump. There are versions without power steering. The steering rack bothers infrequently, and for versions without an amplifier, it is considered eternal at all. But the pump can spoil the nerves. If you do not change the working fluid in the system, the pump will clog over time and begin to howl. As a rule, this happens closer to 120,000 km. If you ignore the noise that has appeared, the pump will turn off periodically at first and then stop at all and pull the reel along with it, where products clog the seals. It is worth noting that replacing the pump is a costly business, about $400. The electric booster, which some versions were equipped with after restyling, is generally reliable, which cannot be said about its wiring. There are no particular complaints about the brake system, except that only the ABS unit does not please with its work. Reflation is required. Brake consumables, despite the low weight of the machine, do not please with the long service life. Front pads serves 30–50,000 kilometers, discs up to 100,000 kilometers. The interior of the Škoda Fabia 2, although made of inexpensive finishing materials and a large amount of hard plastic, looks pretty good even after long and intensive use. Of the shortcomings, one can only single out the tendency of plastic panels to become dirty and their creakiness. Does not contribute to acoustic comfort and poor sound insulation. On older specimens, attention should be paid to the performance of frequently used buttons and switches, since they do not have a long service life. For cars manufactured before 2011 in Russia, the foam rubber in the front seats quickly collapsed. It crumbles on the sharp edges of the seat frame. On later versions, the manufacturer fixed the problem by pasting the frame with rubber tape. As for the reliability of the electrical equipment of the cabin, despite the fact that here it is a bit of a breakdown, it happens quite often. Most of the problems are caused by power windows and central locking, which may not work correctly if the wiring in the door is damaged. Not pleased with the reliability of the elements of seat heating, headlight range control, tidy contacts and door switches. In cold weather, the operation of the stove fan is often accompanied by an unpleasant whistle, Bush's whistle, which disappears after the interior warms up. This problem is well known to fans of VAG cars. In expensive trim levels, the Climatronic climate system is the cause of the headache, the damper actuators often fail, and the unit itself is not particularly reliable. A car with an abnormal alarm and music may have problems with the wiring of the central panel. Škoda Fabia 2 has all the necessary qualities of a city car, which has a reputation as a reliable and inexpensive vehicle to maintain. This car is endowed with a large number of advantages, but it was not without its drawbacks. However, we can confidently say about this model that it is one of the most successful representatives of its class. If you are the owner of this car model, please describe the problems that you had to face during the operation of the car. Perhaps it is your review that will help readers of our site when choosing a car.